These two aircraft are like a cartel in the aircraft market. Who are they? They are Airbus and Boeing. Until now, the monopoly of these two companies has been undisputed. There is an aircraft that aims to disrupt this order, the single-aisle passenger aircraft C919, produced by the state-backed Chinese aviation company COMAC. Moreover, this aircraft is not only targeting the Chinese domestic market, but also Western markets, particularly Europe and America. On paper, the COMAC C919 is comparable to the Boeing 737 MAX and Airbus A320neo. It features a fly-by-wire control system, modern engines, 160 seats, and surprisingly affordable prices. However, this goes beyond technical details. It is an idea born from the mind of a stubborn individual who seeks to challenge aviation dominance. Can this aircraft truly revolutionize the world? Will Western authorities grant the necessary certifications? Will airlines place more or less trust in Chinese-made products? We will find out. And perhaps most importantly, is this a sign of a new global power shift or just another aircraft? The COMAC C919 is not a typical commercial aircraft project. It is part of a larger plan to showcase China's engineering capabilities, economic strength, and international influence in the aviation industry. As a result, the C919 is viewed by the Chinese government not only as a commercial product, but also as a symbol of national pride. The Commercial Aircraft Corporation of China, COMAC, is the driving force behind the project. However, behind COMAC are large state-backed financial institutions, research facilities, and industrial complexes. This aircraft is designed to compete with or surpass famous Western-made aircraft such as the Boeing 737 and Airbus A320. Additionally, the goal is to not only meet domestic demand, but also enter international markets such as Africa, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and even Europe. Where does it stand technically? What is the technical advantage of the C919? The aircraft is ideal for short and medium-haul flights, as it can carry 158 to 174 passengers and has a range of approximately 4,000 to 5,000 kilometers. Its fuselage is somewhat outdated, but it uses aluminium-lithium alloys and modern composite materials. The cockpit is equipped with glass and digital screens and features a fly-by-wire flight control system. COMAC has opted for Western technology rather than a fully domestic alternative for the engines at this stage. Similar to the engines powering the A320neo and 737 MAX, the C919 currently features CFM International's LEAP-1C engines, a French-American joint venture, mounted under the wings. However, China plans to eventually replace these engines with domestically produced CJ1000A engines. This change aims to ensure technical independence while reducing supply chain dependencies and long-term political risk. Great in theory, but what about in practice? China Eastern Airlines, one of China's leading airlines, began operating its first C919 aircraft in 2023. Initially, it is operating domestic flights from its hub in Shanghai. According to initial passenger feedback, the cabin is modern, operates quietly, and has a comfortable interior. However, the real question is whether this process will unfold similarly in other countries. The C919 cannot legally operate in Western markets without obtaining type certification from major civil aviation authorities such as the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, or the European Aviation Safety Agency, EASA. While China has announced its intention to initiate this process, certification is not merely a matter of meeting technical requirements. It also involves complex political and trust-based procedures. Is the real test for Ryanair and Europe about to begin? This is where Ryanair comes in. Ryanair, Europe's most cost-effective airline, is known for its aggressive, cost-focused tactics and has historically used only Boeing 737s. CEO Michael O'Leary is known for his bold statements that shake up the industry. However, his recent statements may be more than just a bargaining tactic. In an interview with Skift, O'Leary stated, "We will take whatever anyone else is doing, with the sole condition being which one is cheaper." For the first time, a Western airline has openly expressed interest in the C919 produced in China. However, we must distinguish between intent and interest. Ryanair has a history of using its pricing power to secure significant discounts from Boeing, therefore showing showing interest in the C919 could be a negotiation strategy. But what if it's not? If Ryanair seriously evaluates this aircraft, the C919 could have its best chance of entering the European market. However, there is a major obstacle in its way: certification. The certification wall in Europe without an EASA certification. An aircraft cannot fly in Europe, no matter how safe or modern it is. This requires much more than just submitting technical documents. Upon closer inspection, it involves thousands of hours of flight data, comprehensive engineering inspections, quality controls, maintenance records, and training procedures. Obtaining this certification is an extremely difficult task. Politically and diplomatically, it is very difficult to get along with other states. Transparency and technological trust between China and the EU will be very important. Therefore, even if Ryanair places an order, the aircraft may not fly in Europe anytime soon. However, the industry is sufficiently shaken by this possibility: the pricing power of the C919. Why does Ryanair find this jet intriguing? The answer is obvious: its price. According to COMAC, the unit price of the C919 is usually between $50 and $60 million. Compared to similar Boeing 737 MAX or Airbus A320neo models, this price is 20 to 30% cheaper. Moreover, if the Chinese government continues to fund the program, this difference could increase even further. Even a difference of $5 to $10 million per jet could mean billions of dollars in savings for budget airlines like Ryanair, which plans to purchase hundreds of aircraft. Airline companies don't just look at price, because there are other important things that matter. Pilot training, spare parts availability, maintenance infrastructure, and reliability are also important factors. And this is where COMAC's capacity to adapt to the complex international aviation network will be tested. China's aviation vision in the C919, just the beginning? The Chinese government wants to sell a lot of aircraft and at the same time make money from them. This is a calculated move to gain a sustainable influence in international aviation. As in the automotive, space, or artificial intelligence industries, Beijing has a clear vision. They want to reduce dependence on other countries and at the same time want to make something out of their own country. In the coming years, the C919 is expected to dominate the domestic market in China. Demand for short and medium-range aircraft will remain high due to the growth of the middle class, the boom in tourism, and significant infrastructure investments. As with the ARJ21, the government is encouraging domestic airlines to use the C919. But COMAC's real ambitions go beyond national borders. A new Airbus and Boeing competitor? Currently, more than 90% of the global narrow-body aircraft market is controlled by Boeing and Airbus. There is no real competition outside these two. Bombardier withdrew from the competition by selling its C-Series to Airbus, and Embraer is still focusing on regional jets. COMAC is now coming on the scene. If the C919 finds customers not only in China, but also in developing countries such as Ethiopia, Egypt, Pakistan, and Indonesia, the balance of power could slowly begin to shift. Price, local production agreements, and political connections are often decisive factors in these markets. The Chinese government has a greater advantage here than other states. China can influence C919 through its strategic alliances in the Middle East, diplomatic relations in Southeast Asia, and infrastructure investments in Africa. Obstacles to C919. However, the road is not easy. For the COMAC C919 to succeed globally, it must overcome a number of significant challenges. Certification process, FAA or EASA approval, is required to enter the Western market for the aircraft. Parts and service network. Airbus and Boeing have a long-established worldwide maintenance network. COMAC is still in the early stages of development. Engine dependence. Engines such as LEAP-1C are purchased from abroad, and you are dependent on another country. It is not possible to reduce this at the moment because its own engines have not yet been developed. Brand trust. It will take time to convince pilots and passengers, but perhaps the most important point is that this is a marathon, not a sprint. With the C919, China is planning for the next 10 to 20 years, not just today. Beijing is unlikely to be deterred by early setbacks or narrow market access. C919, a beginning or a desperate endeavor. The story of the COMAC C919 involves more than its technical characteristics. It reflects China's economic vision, long-term strategic goals, and technological confidence in international aviation. The first steps will undoubtedly be difficult because competing with Boeing and Airbus requires overcoming significant logistical, political, and diplomatic obstacles, as well as technical barriers. However, every important revolution starts with a small step. COMAC is taking its first important step with the C300, just as Airbus did with the A919. China's aviation ecosystem, including the ARJ21 and the upcoming C929, has the potential to develop into a full production chain if the aircraft meets expectations. The C919 is currently being evaluated by major Western airlines, such as Ryanair. If FAA or EASA approval is obtained, we could see Chinese aircraft in European skies. Alternatively, it could control its own continent and create a new network of aviation markets in countries that share China's political and economic views. This is a matter of the future of international aviation, not just China's. Will Boeing and Airbus continue to dominate the industry as a bipolar system? On the other hand, can C919 prospects emerge as the great power? COMAC C919, Boeing and Airbus raw? Or will it remain a popular story domestically and a lone figure on the international stage?